Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks Podcast. So today or Chip Talks Health, also Chip Talks Podcast, but we're rebranding to Chip Talks Health. I screwed up. So Chip Talks Health. Today we're going to talk about gut health, which should be a lot of fun. So if you have, let's say, almost any kind of disease, this talk will be beneficial for you. We'll walk you through exactly kind of how all that works. And ways that you can help, let's say, with your gut health. Now, I will say that if you're interested in these topics, and I say this all the time, no one ever, when I go buy a lawnmower or a golf cart or whatever at the store, a chainsaw, I'm going to get a owner's manual for that thing, right? And it's going to tell me how to maintain it, how to take care of it, how to troubleshoot it if things go wrong. So I never got one of those for me. I never got one of those for this thing that I have to operate every day and somehow try to figure out what's best for it and what hurts it and all that. So we've written an operations manual for humans, and you can go download that on Chip Talks Health. Just go to chiptalkshealth.com, and there's up at the top of the menu, there's a thing that says book. So you can just download it there. You'll have to register on the website, but it's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything. And we want to get this out to as many people as possible. So please go download an operations manual for you, and you'll be able to maintain yourself just like you do your lawnmower. But let's talk a little bit about that maintenance. Okay. So where do we start the conversation on gut health? Well, I think we started in a place where your gut is really the interface, let's say, and you've got other places, like if you're a female, anywhere where you have an opening, let's say to the outside, is an interface between us and the outside world. And so because of that, we have to have a little bit more and different, let's say, immune responses in those areas. We'll form mucus in those areas. So we get mucus in our lungs, we get mucus in our gut. And that helps protect our skin and our, let's say, cellular situations from outside funk, right? And so you've kind of got this situation in your gut where you literally are decaying. You're decaying meat. So you're kind of rotting meat, in your gut, and you're decaying, bacteria, vegetables and fruits and things like that. Okay. So your gut is this, kind of like a big garbage can, honestly. It's just sort of this thing that's always in the process of kind of decay and all that. So it's a very opportunistic place for pathogens. So it's a really, easy place, let's say, for bugs to infect us. And they do. They like to attack us in our weakest places, which is kind of our gut. But let's talk this through in a little bit more detail, because we need some detail here. And we're so, let's say, naive and uneducated about all this. So I'm going to give you a lot of information. You may have to stop, hit pause, think about it a little bit. If you're a chat GPT person or an AI person, please write everything that I'm telling you through chat. I think you'll be shocked at, or maybe you won't be, but anyway, just, run it through chat if you want validation on what I'm telling you, because I'm pretty sure I'm on to highest truth here. Okay. So your body works really around 3 different classes, let's say, of nutrients. So as much diversity as we have out here in our food system, and, we think that we've got all this, wonderful diversity to your body, you only eat 3 different things. Okay. So you might eat carbohydrates. And how do I know this? Right. So how do I know this? Like, is this Chip, coming up with Chip's philosophy on how the human body works? No, not at all. This is what your pancreas thinks. Okay. So your pancreas will make 3 different types of enzymes. It'll make an enzyme for carbohydrates. Okay. So it'll make an enzyme to help you digest carbohydrates. It'll make an enzyme to help you digest protein, and it'll make an enzyme to help you digest fat. Okay. And to your body, there's only 3 things that you eat. It's either fat or protein or carbohydrate. Okay. And it could be plastic or something like that. I guess your body just kind of treats that like another carbohydrate. Now, what do these things do? Well, as far as in your body, again, you have to the biggest things, let's say, that your body is trying to do are to build fuel, right? So you have to fuel yourself, and it takes a lot to fuel you. And how you're fueled is by something called mitochondria, right? And they're these little guys that are in little, almost like their own living organisms that are inside of every cell. And there might be thousands of them inside of a cell, but that's what powers you. Okay. These, billions of cells with quadbillions of mitochondria in them are how we have energy and are able to move and function. But what these guys want to burn is mainly fat. So as far as your body goes, really dietary fat is king. And again, you're wondering, when is Chip going to talk about the gut? Well, I got to talk about all this stuff because it's part of the gut, and it's part of what goes on inside of your gut and kind of how your gut works, right? The mechanisms inside of your gut. So again, fat, there's a special enzyme for fat that gets released in the pancreas. You also start digesting some fat as you're eating it. So as soon as it hits your tongue and in your mouth, you're releasing enzymes that will help, more so with carbohydrates. But you do some with fats. And so fats are hard to digest. You've got to break them down into little pieces. And then they kind of go through your lymphatic system before they get reabsorbed, into your blood system as kind of triglycerides and lipids there. But there's 4 types of fats, and they're very important. So especially omega-3 and omega-6 fats, and we have to eat those fats in balance. If we don't, there's and again, I've done 100 videos on this, but there's all different kinds of things that will get whacked out in your body, especially if you eat more omega-6 than omega-3, which we all do right now. So it's understandable, let's say, what's going on with us. But anyway, so fats are king. So again, we digest those fats, we break them down. Those are really important to our body. Your body wants to do work. So cells inside of your body want to do work. And so again, how do they manifest that work? They manifest that work in the form of proteins. Okay. So cells want to make proteins, and that's how they communicate to their buddies. That's how they do, let's say, bigger picture things outside of the cell. And that's also how they conform themselves. So a cell will have all manner of stuff glued on the outside of it and stuff glued on the inside of it. And it's how that cell will configure itself for whatever it's trying to do. But protein expression is very important in cells. So what do cells need to express proteins? Protein. What is protein? It's just amino acids, right? So there's 9 amino acids. All of them are essential. Again, there's 2 essential fats, omega-3 and omega-6. So you got to have those every day, and you got to have them in balance. There's 9 essential amino acids that make up protein, and you've got to have those every day. Otherwise, your body will just not make protein, won't communicate, won't signal. Cells won't do the work they're supposed to do. So pretty important that we have protein. Okay, the last category is carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are really interesting. They're hard to digest. So we need some complex carbohydrates, not like a Milky Way bar, but like a celery stick. Okay, so a celery stick is hard to digest, and it takes some additional work, and so we need some bacteria. Again, I'm not sure if I'm 100% in this camp yet, but I'll just say this is current thinking, is that we need some bacteria to begin to break down and digest some of those complex fibers, and the bacteria eat those complex fibers. It's part of their whole environment. Not so much with protein and not so much with fat. We do kind of a good job of that on our end, but for whatever reason, carbohydrates we need some help with. Now, what do carbohydrates give us? So again, fats give us fuel. They also give us precursors, and all the precursors really you need to run your body. So your neurotransmitters, hormones, steroids, all that mostly come from fat, or fat kind of combined with glucose steroids and things like that, but mostly from fat. Okay. Protein is how you do work. So your body needs to do work, and so you need protein to do work. Carbohydrates are kind of interesting. So carbohydrates are full of glucose, and that represents a quick fuel. And that is the way you'll make like glucose steroids and things like that with some glucose, but you got to have the fat first. Carbohydrates have a lot of vitamins in them. So again, it's obvious that we need to eat them. And certainly we wouldn't have an enzyme to digest them if we weren't supposed to eat them. So carbohydrates have a lot of vitamins in them. And carbohydrates also will have some trace minerals and things like that in them. But, you know, as far as, let's say, criticality of your body, definitely fats, proteins, carbohydrates is kind of the way that the order there, let's say. Okay, so as you eat these things, again, what happens? Well, as you eat dietary fats, as soon as they start getting digested by the proteins, but as soon as they hit your intestinal lumen, they start forming endocannabinoids. And that's the way that your body understands if you're nutritionally sufficient. So if you're kind of building, let's say, all the endocannabinoids that a perfect fat profile would build, then your hypothalamus, hippocampus through the vagal afferent nerve understands this right off. And it says, you're nutritionally satisfied. I don't have to do anything else. But none of us are in that state right now because, again, we don't have the operations manual for humans that we need. So please download that manual. So none of us are in that state right now. We're all in a state of malnourishment, most of us around omega-3s. Okay, so this is why you'll hear us talk so much about supplementing with omega-3, because we just know that it's a major malnourishment in us. So again, your body, though, as soon as you eat a meal, it understands this by the endocannabinoids that get built. So it's understanding, are you eating way too much omega-6 over omega-3? Are you getting enough saturated fat? Are you getting enough monounsaturated fat? Are you getting enough protein? So all these things are understood in the gut and relayed back to the hypothalamus hippocampus, but mainly through the endocannabinoid system. Okay, so the endocannabinoid system is saying, got enough, don't have enough, I'm full, I'm hungry, you know, anything, your master regulatory system. So it regulates everything about you. So, but if we're insufficient, let's say, in what we eat, what then happens is we're allowed in our gut to kind of develop more of a biome, a microbiome. And the purpose of this biome is to kind of, you know, help you break down nutrients, but also to assist with, you know, these offsets, right? So if you're eating way more omega-6 than omega-3, you're going to set a real inflammatory tone in your body, and your gut biome is going to kind of want to make a lot of anti-inflammatory short-chain fatty acids. Why? Well, they save your life. Otherwise, you'd just be a reactive inflammatory thing. And so something's got to calm that reactivity down. And if you're not eating that in your diet, then you have to produce that some other way. And so there are bacteria that actually produce these useful chemical mediators, so short chain fatty acids, that help with inflammation and help with offsets, let's say, of our diet. Okay. So the gut is really kind of complicated, and it's working very hard, let's say, to save us from our own naivete and idiocy in our diet. And right now we're in about the worst position that we can have. So if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to create a situation where you have the most complicated and diverse and hard to control and easy to get out of control biome, I would feed you a bunch of omega-6s over omega-3s. And that's exactly where we're at right now. And why would this matter? Because your biome has to make up for all the anti-inflammatories that you're not feeding it through omega-3s. Okay. So that's kind of the situation that we're in right now. If you look in science, if you read about this, you're going to read all about how it's important to have a complex microbiome and diversity and all this kind of stuff. Again, this is my opinion, and but I'm all over this every day. I live in this theory, but I'll give you kind of what I think. And again, I don't think we're really, I think when we figure out diet completely, we won't need a biome. Okay. And at that point, that's almost an evolutionary thing for us. We become almost a new being, almost a new cat, almost a new critter. But right now, with our current diet, we need a biome. So we need to understand these things. Now, what happens to the biome? Well, again, it's trying to set itself, right? So it's trying to find this balance and always trying to find this perfect kind of homeostasis around your diet. Okay. But guess what happens? You eat different stuff every day. So guess what it's trying to do? change and morph and make up for, insufficiencies, right? So if you're eating a bunch of, omega-6 over omega-3, you're going to have a certain conformational type of biome to help you build the anti-inflammatory mediators you need to, run your immune system. Okay. If you start eating different foods, that's going to affect basically the raw materials that biome has to work with. And you may have to develop new bacteria to continue producing the offsets that you need to save you. Okay. So the biome is always shifting and always changing. It's got some big picture conformations. So there's two major types of bacteria that are in our gut biome. One is called Firmicutes, and the other is called bacteroids. So overgrowths of Firmicutes are absolutely linked to obesity. So again, if you have a situation where you have overgrown Firmicutes bacteria in your gut, they're going to demand more caloric intake. They're going to make you more hungry because they demand more calories. They demand more calories than other types of bacteria, and they're just, calorie hogs. And they're going to demand quick, easy glucose, like high fructose corn syrup and like processed sugars and things like that. And guess what? They have the ability to make you crave. So they can give you little dopamine and serotonin hits and all this kind of stuff. So what can happen to the biome and how can it get out of whack? All right. Well, Firmicutes overgrowth is one thing. Again, what is that going to lead to? An obesity type profile. So most people who are obese will have overgrown Firmicutes bacteria in their gut. Can you change this? Yeah, it's easy to change. You just have to change your diet. And if you're just going to manually, let's say, do it via diet, it might take a month to begin to turn this around, but you absolutely can turn this around. Fiber in a fermenter will turn this around. So, that's kind of one thing that can happen. There's also certain species of bacteria. One's called Clostridia, and Clostridia can overgrow. There's one bacteria called Clostridia difficile. So he's associated with a lot of pathology, a lot of different diseases can be caused by Clostridium difficile. Clostridium bacteria on the whole will alter your bile and will alter your ability, let's say, to defend yourself in your immune system. So, that's not a normal, let's say, thing. Your bile really isn't meant to be altered by the bacteria that live inside of you for their benefit. So that's not helpful, right? And there's numerous things that happen from that altercation of bile that leave you more vulnerable to other pathogens, let's say. So some of these guys work together, it's like a big, buddy system. And yeah, I'm going to, take out this part of the immune system and that'll leave him vulnerable for, this attack. And so go to town, hook around a pinworm, or go to town, H. pylori. And that's exactly what happens. So again, our guts can also get infected. Now, the way that we classify these in science now, there are helpful or commiserate bacteria. Again, I'm not in this camp. I'm just telling you where we're at right now. So there are helpful or commiserate bacteria. And again, those are the Firmicutes and the bacteroids. And then there's also, pathogenic bacteria. Sometimes there's a bacteroid that's pathogenic. There's certainly Firmicutes that are pathogenic. There's lots of bacteria that can become pathogenic in your gut. All right. So having any amount of bacteria in your gut is probably not a good thing, but it's something that we have to live with right now because we don't understand how this works yet and don't really understand diet. And if you think, oh, well, Chip, you just don't understand it. They're studying this at major universities and all that. They may be, but they're not studying it the way that I'm describing it to you. So this is new, thinking. I'll tell you an experience that I had with a test company. So this company has a test, they're called Gut ID. And if you want to try this test, use the coupon code TRUEMEDX, TRUEMEDX, and you'll get a discount on the test. But anyway, the test is just a straight biome test. So it tests everything in your biome. And the data that they're beginning to get off of these tests is just amazing. So, is there an obesity profile to the biome? Absolutely. Can that be changed? Yes, but you're going to have to work at it. If you just eat the same stuff every day, it's not going to change. There's like a whole program, let's say, that needs to happen if you're really going to change the conformation of your biome. Part of that is behavior, when you eat. Part of that is what you eat. And part of that is supplementation. But it's easy to change the conformation of the biome, at any time. But again, we need to understand this better, right? So we need to understand this far, far better. Here's some examples. So if you're a teen and you have acne, that acne is probably not related, certainly of skin manifestation of something going on, but most acne has to do with gut biome dysregulation. Almost all mental health. Seriously. I mean, there are people who've been through traumas, repeated traumas and things. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about people who are like overly anxious, or people who are, have some psychosis, things like that. Again, depression, anxiety, and a lot of us suffer from that right now. Most of these are gut biome related. So again, and what I'm telling you is you're not broken. You're not going to, sorry, you're going to be forever depressed. You're going to be like Eeyore for the rest of your life. No, not if it's a gut biome thing, because we can fix that. Okay. We can easily fix that. So the other thing that happens in the biome, again, is because it's such this important crossroads of, nutrients and things that you need to get inside of you versus, all this stuff that kind of wants to alter that stuff and change that stuff and not let it inside of you. It's a very important place to make sure that we're kind of feeding it in the right way. So again, omega-3 fats are the biggest thing that we're missing in our diet right now. And omega-3 fats will really, really help the gut. They'll help condition the gut. Every single cell in your body is made from, fats, phospholipids. And again, you want your cell walls built equally from omega-3 and omega-6 fats. You don't want a bunch of omega-6. Why? They'll get sticky. And, again, you'll just be overly dysregulated. So that's a little bit about the biome. Again, it's obviously hugely complex, but it's very dynamic. It's easy to change. So if someone came to you and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, your gut biome is dysregulated," it's like, okay, well, I'll just change my diet. It's literally that easy to fix and change. So again, there you go. If you are, now let me kind of tell you about some pathogens real quick, because this happens to a lot of people. So God is a perfect engineer. Okay. And I'll just walk you through what happens with hookworm and pinworm and how severe this is. But most of us are infected with some kind of pathogen. All right. Why? Because we didn't understand this. Our gut biome's out of whack. Maybe it's influencing our immune system, and we just are vulnerable targets. But what I see most people infected with are two really classifications of things. So one is a group of parasites called helminths. All right. And they're hookworms, roundworms, pinworms, tapeworms are in there, but worms, parasitic worms. So they're a higher life form, let's say, than bacteria. They're, worms, right? And we all get these things. I probably see these in 80 to 90% of the people that we see indicated, let's say. You won't know that you have them. And that's the insidious thing. So you'll never know that you have these guys unless you have them so bad that you might see them in your poop, or you might throw some up, but you have to have quite a bit of them in order for that to happen. But most of us are walking around with a hookworm and pinworm infection, and we don't even know it. Well, let me tell you what this does, okay? And there's another class of pathogens I'll talk about in a second, but let me just tell you about what hookworm and pinworm does, okay? So first of all, in order for these guys to infect you, they have to beat your immune system. And that takes a trick, right? That's hard to do, but they end up beating our immune system, and they'll beat it in a little micro environment. And once they've won that micro environment, then they can start you're done. Basically, they beat you. They beat your immune system, and you are now infected. You will continue to be infected unless you take some kind of action. So unless you take some kind of supplement or, antibiotic or something that is going to target these worms, they're just going to continue to grow. They've got you already. All it takes is one to hook you, boom, and you're done. You are infected, and you will be infected forever and ever unless you do something. So let's talk about what it looks like to be infected forever and ever. The first thing that these guys do is they start sucking your blood, and they're trying to rob you of iron because they need iron to move electrons. So right off the bat, you'll get anemic, right? Then as these guys begin to take hold, and again, your immune system is concerned with one of them, but it gets more and more concerned as they start to proliferate, as they start to be more and more. So what started off as a little Bic lighter type situation in your immune system turns into a raging forest fire. Now, how do you fight this forest fire? Well, you're fighting it with immune mediators. These immune mediators have to come from somewhere, and they come from bone. They come from stem cells that come from bone. So again, a consequence of a severe infection is always osteoporosis. You know, God is a perfect engineer. Why would your bones lose volume when you're still alive? I mean, there has to be a reason, and that reason usually is this turnover where you're, you know, trying to produce enough stem cells to fight some kind of infection, and your bone system can't keep up. Now, as all those stem cells and all, let's say, the dead bodies from the battlefield are being cleaned up and moved around, they have to be moved around in blood. So the next consequence of a severe infection is high blood pressure. Okay. Anyone out there have high blood pressure? It just means you're infected. All right. You're infected with something. And likely it's a hook round. If your gut doesn't burn every time that you eat, it's probably hook round and pinworm. If your gut burns every time that you eat, it's probably a bacteria called H. pylori, which I'll talk about in a second. Okay. But then these hook round and pinworms, again, so now they've got you infected. Again, now your blood system is involved because of the volume of stuff. You've got to clean all that blood. How do you clean it? Your kidneys clean it. They get tired. They get tired of cleaning stuff. And when they get tired enough, they'll just get basically infected themselves. So they'll get glomerulonephritis, or they'll just give up. They'll just quit trying. They'll start throwing off diabetic markers. You know, all kinds of things will happen to your kidneys. But, you know, again, God is a perfect engineer. Your kidneys don't just fail. It takes a reason for your kidneys to fail. And again, if they're, you know, crashing and burning, it's likely because of some kind of infection, because they're just tired. The last thing, well, the liver is kind of in there too. And the liver will get involved with this, with, you know, fats, and there's all kinds of things that can get wonked out with the liver. But omega-3, make sure you're supplementing with omega-3. That's just the easiest thing to fix it all. The last thing, though, is the heart, right? And you think about, well, it's easy to pump water through a tube. It's hard to pump syrup through a tube, right? And that's what begins to happen over time under chronic, you know, infection, chronic inflammation, is the blood becomes more syrupy and thick, and the heart has to do more work to pump it. Again, you don't just have a heart attack. It's just like God doesn't decide one day, Chip, I think your heart will explode. Doesn't work that way, right? Your heart gets stressed, it gets tired, and then it gives up and you have a heart attack. But it comes from something. There's some underlying cause. There's way more symptoms that are associated with, let's say, Helmus, hook round and pinworms, that I'm even naming, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of what happens in your body and how these infections can really cause, you know, all manner of ill. And the last one that I'll talk about is H. pylori. So if you have burning and upset when you eat, you likely have a pathogen called H. pylori. He's a bacteria. He probably infects 60% of us, 50 to 60% of us. So quite a bit. And, you know, someone who's infected with H. pylori, if you hear them talk about when they eat, they get burning, or they have IBS, or they have Crohn's, or things like that. That's most likely H. pylori. Now, H. pylori can be very severe. He can cause stomach cancer, all right? So he's one of the few bacterias that they are now admitting is a source of cancer, but he absolutely can cause stomach cancer. He can cause pancreatic cancer. He can cause esophageal cancer. So, and he lives just in the esophagus, the stomach, and the pancreas, and he can cancer up any of those guys. So he's an important guy to get in front of. But again, if you're having gastric upset, burping, things like that, you likely have pylori. Now, we have built a product. We've been looking at this for so long, and it takes, let's say, you have to intervene. If you have pylori, if you have hookworm and pinworm, you have to intervene with these pathogens. They won't just go away, and you won't be able to, let's say, build up your immune system enough to where your immune system will kill these guys. They've already beat your immune system. They know how to do it, and they're doing it every single day. So you're not going to get them sideways. You're going to have to go at them directly. The pharmaceutical industry has some antibiotics for these. For the Helmus, they're, I would say, a little bit better than the pylori. The pylori, they don't always work, the antibiotics. So again, I believe God built us a perfect system out here in nature, and there's something out here in nature that will kill any bug that you have in you. And that's a guarantee. That's God's guarantee to you. So, there's definitely stuff that in combination will kill pylori and will kill hookworm and pinworm, but they're kind of different stuff. So the Helma stuff is one kind of category of stuff, black walnut seed hull, wormwood, things like that. The pylori needs a different kind of classification of stuff. So more, garlic and berberine and things like that to kill the pylori. So anyway, we have built product to help with these things. So if you go to the TrueMedix website and you look for our Gut Restore product, that is our H. pylori product, but it's also really good to help maintain and manage your biome. So if you're worried about your biome, that's a great product to have and a great product to use. We also have another product called Deworm, and our Deworm product is directly at Helmus. All right. But those are the two major categories of, let's say pathogens, bad guys that we see that like to locate in the gut. So your gut is kind of this complicated place of, commiserate bacteria that's supposed to be trying to help us and help us break down complicated fibers and things like that. And then these pathogenic type bugs, which are more hurtful to you. So they want to exist with you, but they want to live off of you, right? And really all this bacteria is the same way. It's trying to keep you alive while it stays alive, right? So it's kind of always a competition thing. Now, let me walk you through a couple more things. So people are pretty concerned about metals right now. So we're beginning to understand, hey, if I've got too much of a metal or I don't have enough of a metal, that can be detrimental to my health. Well, again, you have to, this is a long conversation, but I'll do it anyway. So what is the definition of life, right? Pick them. They're wrong, I would say. So to me, the definition of life is it's a rate of moving electrons. And I don't know what that threshold is right off the top of my head, but it's a rate of moving electrons. And so as things die, they slow down their rate of moving electrons to where eventually, they're decayed and there's no electrons left. But there's kind of a rate of moving electrons that if we're above that rate, then we're alive. And if we fall below that rate, a couple of things happen. That tissue, let's say, begins to die, but it also begins to attract bacteria. All right. So it begins to attract certain types of bacteria that like to break tissue down. And, they're important. Like if you see that dead thing by the side of the road and you come back a week from now, it's gone, right? Well, why? Because the bacteria has gotten in that thing and broken it down because electrons aren't moving at let's say, a quick enough rate. All right. So all that as background to say, how do you move electrons? Well, it takes metal to move electrons. And your body has a real tight range of the metals that it wants to kind of have and maintain. So you have a tight range on iron, you have a tight range on magnesium, you have a tight range on these metals that our body wants to kind of use, let's say that are useful for our body. Well, gut bacteria, even the good gut bacteria, but certainly pathogens disrupt that. So they also need metals, and they need metals in order to stay alive. They've got to pass electrons around. They've got to do them at a certain rate. Otherwise, they'll be decayed by the same bacteria that decay us, right? And so they have to move electrons at a certain rate. And in order to do this, they need metal. So certain bacteria will sequester metals, or they'll either rob them from your blood system, and in that case you'll be low on metals, or they'll hold on to them in your gut system which will also leach into blood, and then you'll be high on metals. But it's always an infection that alters our metal. So some kind of pathogen is jacking around with our system. So let's leave it there for today. Again, always a lot to talk about here. It's all these things tie together, as you're beginning to probably realize. Gut health is deeply associated with immune health, is associated with omega-3, omega-6 balance, and the endocannabinoid system. So anyway, we'll see you next week for another exciting version of Chip Talks Health. You guys go out and download the book, chiptalkshealth.com. Just download the book. And look at the Gut Restore product. Gut Restore product and our deworm products. I can almost assure you that if you're listening to this, you're infected with either hookworm or pinworm or H. pylori. So, and those products will get both of those things. So anyway, we'll leave it there for now. We'll see you guys. See you next week. Bye.